You know, for the longest time, English theater was all about the high and mighty. We're talking kings, queens, and epic historical showdowns. But right around the turn of the 17th century, something really fascinating started to happen. The spotlight, it shifted. It moved away from the fancy royal court and zoomed right in on the grimy, bustling, and ambitious streets of London. This is a story of Jacobean city comedy, a genre that put the city and its people, warts and all, right at the center of the stage.
So here's our roadmap. First, we'll explore what made this new kind of comedy so revolutionary. Then, we'll dive into the mind of its biggest champion, Ben Jonson, and his unique theory of drama. We'll see that theory in action with his absolute masterpiece, Volpone. After that, we'll see how other playwrights looked at London through completely different eyes. And then we'll wrap it all up by thinking about what this incredible genre left behind.
So, what exactly was city comedy? I mean, it wasn't just about telling a few jokes in an urban setting. No. This was a radical departure. It was a whole new way of thinking about what theater could be, and what it should do.
This is the big question, right? This is what city comedy asks. Instead of these grand tales of noble heroes, all of a sudden audiences were watching stories about their own world. They were seeing goldsmiths, shopkeepers, ambitious apprentices, cunning widows, and oh yeah, plenty of conmen. It felt real, it was immediate, and it was brilliantly funny.
And this is the real game changer. It wasn't just a change of scenery. This was a fundamental shift in the purpose of theater. For the first time on this kind of scale, the stage became a mirror held right up to contemporary society, reflecting all of its energy, its anxieties, and its absurdities right back at the people sitting in the audience.
Okay, so you absolutely cannot talk about city comedy without talking about the man who basically defined it, Ben Jonson. Now, Jonson wasn't just a brilliant playwright, he was this fierce intellectual, a true classicist who had a very clear, almost scientific vision for what comedy was supposed to accomplish.
This right here is pretty much Jonson's mission statement, straight from one of his first big hits. He's throwing out the fantasy plots of his rivals. He wants realism, deeds and language such as men do use. And just look at that last line. He wants to sport with human follies, not with crimes. He's not writing about murder and treason. He's a social satirist. He's fascinated by the everyday flaws that drive us. Greed, jealousy, ambition, vanity, you name it.
And this was his main tool for the job, what he called the comedy of humors. The idea was actually simple, but brilliant. He'd create characters who were totally defined and driven by a single obsessive trait, their humor. So these weren't fully rounded people. They were more like walking, talking case studies of human folly. It was this powerful, almost surgical way to dissect the moral anatomy of his society.
All right, so theory is one thing, but let's see it in action. And believe me, there is no better example of Jonson's theory at work than his savage masterpiece, Volpone, which means the fox. This is Jonson taking his idea of a single dominant humor, in this case, pure, unadulterated greed, and building an entire world around it.
The play opens with these absolutely incredible lines. Volpone isn't praying to a god, he's literally worshiping his pile of gold. He calls it his saint, the world's soul. In just a couple of lines, Jonson shows us Volpone's humor with terrifying clarity. This isn't just a guy who likes money, this is a man for whom money has replaced everything: religion, morality, humanity itself.
The plot is just a masterclass in cynical scheming. Volpone, the fox, pretends he's on his deathbed. His servant, Mosca, or the fly, then buzzes around Venice, telling a whole cast of legacy hunters, a vulture, a crow, and a raven, that they are secretly about to be named the sole heir. Of course, they're all desperate to lock down the fortune, so they start showering the dying Volpone with extravagant gifts to seal the deal. It's this brilliant, self-perpetuating engine of greed.
But here's the thing. Volpone isn't just a critique of one greedy man. It's an anatomy of a sick society. The legacy hunters are every bit as corrupt as Volpone's. And in the end, the Venetian state, the very institution that's supposed to represent justice, turns out to be just as greedy. Jonson is suggesting that the line between the criminal and the state has basically dissolved. But Jonson's dark, satirical vision, well, it wasn't the only view of London you'd see on the Jacobean stage. What's so fascinating is how different artists can look at the exact same place and see entirely different worlds. Other playwrights were holding up their own mirrors to the city, and they reflected some very different images. Take Thomas Dekker, for instance. In a play like The Shoemaker's Holiday, his London is almost the complete opposite of Jonson's. It's a place of honest tradesmen, romantic love, and middle-class virtue.
Where Johnson, the classical moralist, sees obsession and decay, Dekker celebrates the vibrant energy of this rising merchant class. His tone isn't biting and satirical, it's cheerful, almost patriotic, a real celebration of craftsmanship and community.
And then you've got this third major voice, Thomas Middleton. Now, if Johnson was the moralist and Dekker was the romantic, Middleton was the true cynic. He saw a city that was just thoroughly and systemically corrupt, and his plays reflect that much darker, more sprawling vision of city life.
And here's the key difference. Where Johnson uses his humors to zoom in on individual psychological flaws, Middleton's plays, like A Chaste Maid in Cheapside, show corruption woven into the very fabric of society. It's in the class conflicts, the dodgy business deals, the political maneuvering. For Middleton, the problem wasn't just a few bad apples. The whole barrel was rotten. He's suggesting this deep-seated rot that maybe satire could expose, but could never really cure.
So when you put it all together, Johnson's sharp satire, Dekker's cheerfulness, Middleton's cynicism, what do you get? You get this incredible composite picture, this amazing mosaic of an entire era captured through its theater.
And that is the ultimate legacy of this genre. For a few incredible decades, the London stage was the most honest and unflinching mirror the city had. It showed Londoners who they were, what they wanted, what they feared, and, let's be honest, just how ridiculous they could be. It was immediate, it was relevant, and it was utterly captivating.
All right, so if you're going to take anything away from this, remember these key points. First, that huge shift in focus from royalty down to the common citizen. Second, the new obsession with realism and showing contemporary city life. Third, the powerful use of satire as a tool for social commentary. And finally, how these plays captured the moral chaos of a world that was just changing at a dizzying speed.
And that leaves us with one last thought. Johnson and his contemporaries held up a mirror to their age. If a playwright were to do the same for our world, right now, what would that play look like? What modern humors, what comedies of greed and folly would we see reflected on that stage? It's a fascinating question, isn't it?